Israel. 4 hostages have been rescued alive. The 4 were held in 2 residential areas in central Gaza after being kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival on October 7.
Now, one of those rescued, Noah Argamani, inadvertently became the face of the hostages after a clip of her kidnapping went viral on social media. And here she is in the past 24 hours, reunited with her father after 8 months being held in captivity.
Now, Israelis across the world have seen this as due cause to rejoice and celebrate. Here they were in Melbourne. And also in Athens. And of course in Tel Aviv.
But unbelievably, we now live in a world in which the rescue of Jewish hostages is seen by some as a bad thing. Check out this tweet from British newspaper columnist Owen Jones, who calls the rescues a war crime and says shame on anyone celebrating it.
And here is Aussie actor Guy Pearce's take, noting he's pleased hostages are home, but, quote, let's not be distracted and forget about all the unnecessary Palestinian deaths. We know the IDF could have brought all the hostages home months ago and avoided the senseless murder of innocent Palestinian children, but we know their true motivation.
And not to be outdone, a spokesperson for the UN, Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, she insisted Israel had used the rescue of the hostages as, can you believe this, as an excuse to kill Palestinians.
I mean, look, we can hardly be surprised. The United Nations has acted as some sort of a sympathiser to the terrorist organisation, James, since October 7, refusing to actually come out and condemn Hamas, which has been appalling. But I just think Francesca Albanese's take was so bad and so incorrect. Firstly, she said that she's relieved that the 4 hostages have been released. Well, they weren't released. The hostages were not released. They were, in fact,
generously
they didn't hand them over. They were actually rescued by the IDF, who went in there, risked their own lives to save their own countrymen and women, and that in itself is bravery. She also said that Israel has used hostages to legitimise, she said, killing, injuring, maiming, starving and traumatising Palestinians in Gaza. Well, it's been 8 months since the October 7 massacre, which Hamas, of course, started. And every drop of blood spilled since October 7 has Hamas's hands all over it because they started this war. They also, James, had 8 months to release these hostages, and they've yet to do so. It's just, it beggars belief, the lies that are being told and the narrative that has been spun the other way.
This UN official also got stuck into the Israeli military for apparently hiding in humanitarian trucks as part of their rescue operation. I mean, she's kind of missing the point. Hamas were hiding hostages in a civilian area. And as for Guy Pearce, who was brilliant in Neighbours, we love him for that. But, I mean, clearly he's not the sharpest tool in the box, saying it's great that the hostages were rescued, but we don't want to be distracted from the killing of... Distracted. The point was the rescuing of hostages.
Correct.
They're not a distraction. That's the main game.
No. And the other issue that I have with the tweets and the social media carry-on right now is that the death toll, Hamas produces its own figures, which have been disputed. And even in this instance, during this rescue operation, Hamas has come out with their own set of figures as to how many Palestinian lives were killed. How can you be guaranteed or sure that Hamas, of course, a terrorist organisation, is telling the truth here?
But, I mean, this is how crazy it gets, right? I want to show you a clip from a BBC interview where a host asks former IDF commander Jonathan Cornicus if perhaps, you know, the mistake the Israelis made is they should have let the people holding the hostages know in advance that they were coming, because that would have been a nicer thing to do. Have a listen to this.
There are reports of women, of children who are among the dead. It is appearing to be a high civilian death toll. Would there have been a warning to those civilians for them to get out on time?
For sure, of course, we cannot anticipate Israel to be warning ahead of a raid to extract or to save hostages, because then what the terrorists would do is to kill the hostages.
The patience of Israeli officials and spokespeople who have to explain the bleeding obvious to people who will not see reality is just remarkable.
It is. I mean, what an extraordinary question to be asking. Not a taxpayer-funded service, but would we expect anything less?